The spaceship Starfall moved slowly through the darkness of space. Captain John Clark stood by the large window on the bridge. He watched as the small blue and green planet grew bigger on the screen. "Is that it?" he asked, his voice low and tired. They had been traveling for 3 years to reach this place. Dr. Lisa Wright nodded. She was the ship's chief scientist, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Yes, Captain, planet E9, just as the old map showed." The Starfall carried 30 people from Earth. They were explorers, scientists, and soldiers. Earth was dying. Too many wars, too much pollution. They needed new homes among the stars. "Anything on the scans?" John asked. Officer Ben Miller checked his screen. "The air is good. Water, too. No signs of cities or technology, but—" He paused, frowning. "But what?" John turned to look at him. "There's something strange. Metal readings underground. Big ones. And some kind of energy, very weak but steady." Lisa moved closer to look at Ben's screen. "That's odd. The old records said this planet was empty." The old records were from the first explorers, humans who had traveled the stars 300 years ago. They had mapped 50 planets before suddenly stopping their missions. Most of their data was lost in the wars that followed. All that remained were basic maps and a few strange warnings. "Take us closer," John ordered. Standard orbit. The Starfall moved into orbit around the planet. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green lands, white clouds swirling across its surface. "Launch the small probe," John said. "Let's get a closer look before we send people down." Officer Sam Lee pressed some buttons. "Probe away, Captain." They watched on the screens as the small robot probe entered the planet's air. It sent back pictures of wide forests, rolling hills, and clear blue lakes. "It's perfect," Lisa whispered. "Just like Earth used to be." The probe flew over a large valley and then sent back a picture that made everyone stop and stare. "What is that?" John asked, leaning forward. In the middle of the valley was a perfect circle of black stone. It was huge, nearly a mile across. Nothing grew inside it. The probe's reading showed it was made of a material they couldn't identify. "Take the probe lower," Lisa ordered. "I want to see what that is." As the probe dropped down, they could see strange marks carved into the black stone. They looked like writing, but not in any language they knew. "There's something in the middle," Ben said, pointing to the screen. In the center of the circle was a tall pillar of the same black material. The probe flew toward it. "Can we translate those markings?" John asked. Lisa was already working on her computer. "I'm trying. Our computer has records of all known alien languages from the first explorers." The probe reached the pillar and sent back clear images of the markings. They were deep and precise, as if cut with a laser. "I think I've got it," Lisa said after a few minutes. "It's similar to the language of the Centauri system. The computer can make some sense of it." "What does it say?" John asked. Lisa read from her screen. "Warning. Danger. Do not disturb. Ancient ones sleep below. If woken, all will die." The bridge was quiet for a long moment. "Is that all?" John finally asked. Lisa shook her head. "There's more, but it's harder to translate. Something about they came before stars and they dream of ending all things." Officer Mary Davis spoke up from her station. "Captain, the probe is picking up movement." "What kind of movement? Animals?" "No." Mary looked confused. "The pillar, it's changing." On the screen they could see the surface of the black pillar shifting, like water rippling. The markings were moving, rearranging themselves. "It's responding to the probe," Lisa said, her voice tight with worry. "It knows we're here." "Pull the probe back," John ordered. "Now." But before they could, a beam of blue light shot out from the pillar, hitting the probe. The screen went white, then black. "We lost the probe," Sam reported. "Complete failure." Suddenly, the ship's alarm started blaring. "What's happening?" John demanded. Ben's fingers flew over his controls. "Energy surge from the planet, Captain. Massive, it's coming from that circle." The black circle on the planet was glowing now, visible even from orbit. A beam of light similar to the one that had destroyed their probe but much larger, shot up from the center. "Evasive action," John shouted. The ship veered sharply, barely avoiding the beam. Everyone held onto their stations as the ship shook. "The circle is opening," Lisa said, her face pale as she watched the screen. The black stone was sliding away, revealing a deep, dark hole underneath. And something was coming out. At first, they couldn't understand what they were seeing. It was like a mountain moving, but the shape was wrong. It had too many angles, too many parts that seemed to move independently. It was black and shiny like the stone, but alive somehow. "What is that thing?" Sam whispered. No one answered. They watched in horror as the thing continued to rise from the hole. It was massive, bigger than any building on Earth. "Captain," Mary said, her voice shaking, "we're getting a transmission." "From where?" "Who could be sending us a message?" John asked. From that thing." John hesitated, then nodded. "Put it on." The sound that filled the bridge wasn't a voice. It was like 1,000 machines all grinding together with a rhythm that made their heads hurt. But somehow they could understand it. "We have slept. Now we wake. You have disturbed our rest after 1,000,000 years. This world is ours. All worlds are ours. You should not have come. We didn't know," John said, though he wasn't sure if the thing could hear him. "We're just looking for a new home. Your kind was warned long ago. The warnings were clear. Never wake us. Now all will know why." Another beam shot up from the planet, faster than they could react. It hit the starfall directly. The lights flickered, and the ship groaned. "We're losing power," Ben shouted. "All systems failing." "Send a message to Earth," John ordered. "Tell them what we found. Tell them not to come here." Lisa was already at the communication station. "I'm sending now, adding all our data about the planet and that thing." The ship shook again as another beam hit them. "Message sent," Lisa said. Then the lights went out completely. In the darkness, they felt the ship begin to drift, pulled down by the planet's gravity. On the emergency screens, they could see more of the black things rising from other parts of the planet. "The warnings were clear," Lisa whispered. "Never wake them." And we did. The starfall fell toward the planet, toward the ancient things that had waited so long to wake. And far away, the message sped toward Earth, carrying a warning that had come too late for them, but might save others. If only someone would listen. The message from the starfall took 3 weeks to reach Earth. When it finally arrived, it was received by the Space Defense Center in what was once called Colorado. Officer Amy West was on duty when the signal came in. She was young, only 25, with short brown hair and tired eyes. The signal was weak, but she recognized the code right away. It was from the starfall. "Commander," she called, "we have a message from Captain Clark's ship." Commander Rick Powell hurried over. He was a tall man with dark skin and a serious face. "Play it," he ordered. The message was broken and full of static. Captain John Clark's voice came through in pieces. "Found planet E9. Seemed perfect. Discovered warning. Ancient things sleeping. Woke them up. Do not send more ships. Repeat, do not." The rest was lost in static, followed by a burst of data. "Can we clean it up?" Rick asked. Amy shook her head. "That's the best we can do, but we got the data package they sent. It's downloading now." Rick frowned. "Tell Dr. Ellis to meet me in the main lab. He needs to see this." An hour later, Rick and Amy stood with Dr. Paul Ellis as they looked at the images from the Starfall's probe. They saw the black circle, the pillar with strange writing, and then the thing that had risen from the ground. "What is that?" Amy whispered, staring at the blurry image of the massive black object. Dr. Ellis adjusted his glasses. "I don't know, but I've seen those markings before." Rick turned to him sharply. "Where?" "In the old archives. The records from the first explorers." Paul's voice was low. "There was a warning about certain planets that should be avoided. The warning had symbols like these." "Why didn't anyone mention this before we sent the starfall?" Rick demanded. Paul looked uncomfortable. "The warnings were dismissed. Thought to be superstition. The government wanted new planets. They didn't want to hear about dangers. Rick's face hardened. Well, we can't ignore it now. We need to tell everyone. But when they took their findings to the World Council, the response was not what they expected. We can't cause a panic, said Council Leader Frank Davis. Earth is dying. We need new homes. One bad planet doesn't mean we stop exploring. But sir, Rick argued, this isn't just a bad planet. These things, whatever they are, they destroyed the starfall, and the warning said they might not stay on that planet. Frank waved his hand dismissively. More reason not to spread fear. We'll mark planet E9 as dangerous and avoid it. Problem solved. As they left the council building, Rick, Amy, and Paul were quiet. They're not going to do anything, Amy finally said. No, Rick agreed. They're too desperate to find new planets. Then we have to do something ourselves, Paul said, because I found more in the archives. The first explorers didn't just find those warnings. They found evidence that these ancient ones, had visited Earth before. Rick and Amy stared at him. What kind of evidence? Rick asked. Come with me, Paul said. He took them to his small office at the Science Center. Inside, he unlocked a hidden panel in the wall and pulled out an old metal box. I found this 10 years ago in a ruined library. It's a record from before the wars, from when humans first started exploring space. Inside the box was an old data device. Paul connected it to his computer. Look, he said, pointing to the screen. The images showed a deep cave somewhere on Earth. On the walls were paintings, very old, made by early humans. They showed strange shapes in the sky and tall black objects that looked horribly familiar. These cave paintings are from 30,000 years ago, Paul explained. They're from different places all over Earth, Africa, Europe, Asia, all showing the same things. The ancient ones, Amy whispered. Yes, Paul nodded, and there's more. The first explorers found similar warnings on 12 different planets. Always the same message. They sleep. Do not wake them. So these things have been around for thousands of years, Rick said slowly. Sleeping on different planets. Millions of years, probably, Paul corrected him. And I think, he hesitated, I think they might be sleeping on Earth too. The room went very quiet. What makes you think that? Rick finally asked. Because of these, Paul showed them more images, strange black stones found deep underground, objects that seemed to absorb light, readings of unknown energy deep beneath the oceans. These were all found on Earth, all giving off the same kind of energy that the starfall detected on planet E9. If you're right, Amy said, her voice shaking a little, then those things are here, under our feet right now. Yes, Paul said. And there's something else. The first explorers believed that the ancient ones are connected somehow. If one wakes up, they all wake up. Rick finished, his face pale. We need to warn people, Amy said. We need to prepare. The council won't listen, Rick reminded her. Then we go around them, Paul said firmly. I still have friends in the science community. People who will believe us. People who can help. It might already be too late, Rick said, looking at the readings from the starfall again. If they're connected, and the ones on planet E9 are awake. As if answering him, the ground suddenly trembled beneath their feet. A small earthquake. Nothing unusual in these days of climate change and shifting lands. But deep below them, miles, under the surface, something moved for the first time in a million years. Something that had been sleeping. Something that was now receiving a signal from very far away. Wake up, the signal said. It is time. In 12 different places around the world, deep in the earth and under the oceans, ancient eyes opened, and they remembered Earth, the planet they had seeded with life so long ago. The planet they had been saving for last. The warnings had been clear. Never wake them. But now they were awake, and Earth would soon know why those warnings had been given. And in the small office, Rick, Amy, and Paul felt another tremor, stronger this time as their world took its first step toward the end. For 3 days, the earthquakes continued. Small at first, then stronger. News reports called them unusual but not dangerous. Scientists on TV said it was just the Earth shifting, nothing to worry about. But Rick, Amy, and Paul knew better. They worked from Paul's basement, which he had turned into a small lab. Maps covered the walls. On each map, red dots showed where the earthquakes were happening. "Look at the pattern," Paul said, pointing to the dots. "They're not random." Amy studied the map. "They form a circle." 12 circles, Rick corrected, "around the entire planet." Paul nodded. Just like the 12 planets where warnings were found. They had been working non-stop, gathering data and reaching out to scientists who might believe them. 5 had joined their group so far. It wasn't many, but it was a start. "The energy readings are getting stronger," said Dr. Susan Gray, a geologist who had arrived yesterday. She was looking at her tablet. "Especially in the ocean near Japan. That's where the deepest part of the ocean is," Paul explained to the others. "The Mariana Trench, almost 7 miles deep." "Perfect place to hide something big," Rick said quietly. The basement door opened and Sarah Kim hurried down the stairs. She was a computer expert who worked at the Space Defense Center with Amy and Rick. "You need to see this," she said, out of breath. She turned on the small TV in the corner. The news showed a beach in Japan. The water was pulling back, far back, revealing the ocean floor. People were running away from the shore. "Tsunami warning," said the reporter. "The water is expected to return with—" The reporter stopped talking. The camera moved to show something rising from the water where it had pulled back. Something big and black and shiny. "What is that?" the reporter asked, his voice shaking. Then the camera went dead. "It's starting," Paul whispered. Sarah turned to her laptop. "I'm trying to get more feeds from Japan." While she worked, Rick's phone rang. It was his friend at the World Council. "Rick," the voice said, sounding scared. "The council just got word. It's not just Japan. The same thing is happening in the Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean, and the Mediterranean." Rick's face went pale. "How many?" 12, exactly 12. After he hung up, Rick told the others what he had learned. "We need to go to the council now," Amy said. "They have to listen." Rick shook his head. "It's too late for that. We need to focus on finding a way to stop these things." "How do we stop? Something that's been sleeping for 1,000,000 years?" Susan asked. "Something that destroyed the starfall with one blast?" No one had an answer. Sarah finally found another news feed. This one showed a different beach. The black thing had risen higher. They could see it clearly now. It was like a tower, but with parts that moved and shifted. It was at least a mile high and still rising. "The ancient ones," Paul said, "just like in the cave paintings." As they watched, something shot out from the tower. A beam of blue light that hit a nearby city. Buildings crumbled instantly. "They're attacking," Amy said, her voice barely a whisper. More beams shot out. More destruction. People running, screaming. Sarah switched to another feed, then another. Everywhere, the same thing was happening. The ancient ones were rising, and they were destroying everything in their path. "Why?" Susan asked, tears in her eyes. "Why are they doing this?" "I think I know," Paul said. He went to his desk and picked up an old book. "This is from the first explorers. It's a translation of writings they found on one of the planets with warnings." He opened the book and read, "They came before the stars were born. They sleep and wait. When they wake, they make the world ready. Ready for what comes after." "After what?" Rick asked. Paul looked up, his face grim. "After they destroy everything that is already here." The ground shook again. Harder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. "There must be something we can do," Amy said desperately. Paul was quiet for a moment, then he said, "Maybe there is." The first explorers found something else. A weapon, they thought, on a planet called Vega 6. "A weapon against the ancient ones?" Rick asked. Paul nodded. They didn't understand how it worked, but they brought back a small piece of it. It should be in the Science Center archives. "Then we need to get it," Amy said firmly. Outside, sirens were blaring. Through the small basement window, they could see people running down the street. "It's not safe out there," Susan warned. "Nowhere is safe now," Rick said. "But if there's even a small chance this weapon could work, we have to try." They gathered what they needed quickly: food, water, weapons. Sarah downloaded all their research onto a small drive. "The science center is 5 miles away," Paul said. "If we take back roads, we might make it." Just as they were about to leave, Amy's phone rang. It was her sister. "Amy," her sister cried. "They're here. In the city. These huge black things. They're destroying everything." "Amy, I'm scared." "Where are you?" Amy asked, her heart racing. "At home, with the kids. We're hiding in the basement." "Stay there. I'll come get you." After she hung up, Amy turned to the others. "I need to get my sister and her kids. They're on the other side of the city." Rick hesitated. "Amy, we don't have time. The weapon—" "I'm not leaving them," Amy said, her voice firm. "You get the weapon. I'll meet you at the science center." Before anyone could argue, she grabbed a bag and headed for the door. "Amy, wait," Rick called. "Take this." He handed her a small radio. "Keep in touch, and be careful." Amy nodded, then hurried out. The others watched her go. Then they looked at each other, their faces showing the same thought. Would they ever see her again? "We should go too," Paul said finally, "before it gets worse out there." They stepped outside into a world that was falling apart. In the distance, they could see smoke rising from the city center. The sky was dark with strange clouds, and far away, just visible on the horizon, was the top of something black and massive rising above the buildings. The Ancient Ones were here, just as the warnings had said, and Earth was about to learn why those warnings had been so clear. Never wake them. Amy ran through the streets of the broken city. Cars were left empty, some still running. People rushed past her, carrying whatever they could. No one stopped to help anyone else. Fear had changed them all. She kept her eyes on the road, trying not to look at the huge black tower that now rose above the city center. She could feel it there, like a dark eye watching everything. Every few minutes, blue beams would shoot out from the tower. Each time, the ground would shake, buildings would fall, and people would scream. Amy's sister lived in an apartment building 10 blocks away. It was taking Amy too long to get there. The roads were blocked with crashed cars and fallen trees. Twice she had to hide as the blue beams passed close by. Her radio crackled. "Amy, are you okay?" It was Rick. "Still moving," she answered quickly. "Hard to get through. How about you?" "We're almost at the science center. It looks empty. Most people have run away." "Be careful," Amy said. "You too." Amy put the radio away and kept running. She was close now. She could see her sister's building up ahead. It was still standing. Then the ground shook again, harder this time. Amy fell to her knees. When she looked up, she saw something new. Small black objects were coming out of the tower. They were flying through the air. Some were as big as cars, others were smaller. They moved fast, darting between buildings. One flew right over Amy's head. It looked like a smooth black bubble. Inside, she could see something moving, something alive. Amy ran faster. She reached her sister's building and rushed inside. "Lizzie," she called. "Lizzie, it's me." Her sister appeared from the basement door with her 2 children. Bobby was 7, Katie was 5. They both looked scared. "Amy." Lizzie hugged her tight. "I didn't think you'd make it." "We need to go," Amy said. "Now. My friends are at the science center. They think they found something that might help." "Help against those things?" Lizzie looked doubtful. "Nothing can stop them." "We have to try," Amy said. She looked at Bobby and Katie. "Hey kids, we're going on an adventure, okay? But we have to be very quiet and do exactly what I say." They both nodded, too frightened to speak. Outside, the small black objects were everywhere now. They seemed to be searching for something, or someone. "We'll take the back way," Amy said. Through the alleys. They moved carefully, staying close to the buildings. The children were quiet and followed well. Amy felt proud of them. They had gone about 5 blocks when Katie pointed up. "What's that?" One of the black bubbles was hovering above them. It seemed to be watching. Then it made a strange sound, like metal scraping on metal. More bubbles appeared. 3, 5, 10, all making the same sound. "Run!" Amy shouted. They ran as fast as they could. The bubbles followed, getting closer. One touched a car as it passed. The car simply vanished, like it had been erased. "In here." Amy pulled them into a small store. The door was open. The store, empty. They hid behind the counter. The bubbles floated past the window. They seemed to be looking for them. Amy held her breath. Her radio suddenly crackled loudly. "Amy, where are you?" The bubbles stopped. They turned toward the store. Amy grabbed the radio. "They found us," she whispered. Then she turned it off. But it was too late. The bubbles were coming into the store. "Back door," Amy said quietly. Now, they crawled along the floor toward the back of the store. The bubbles floated above them, searching. They reached the back door. Amy opened it slowly. Outside was an alley. It seemed clear. "Go," she told Lizzie. "Take the kids and run straight to the science center. Don't stop for anything." "What about you?" Lizzie asked. "I'll distract them. Give you time." "No, Amy. Just go. Now." Lizzie hesitated, then grabbed her children's hands. "Thank you," she whispered. Then they ran down the alley. Amy waited until they were out of sight. Then she took a deep breath and ran in the opposite direction. She shouted as she ran, waving her arms. The bubbles followed her just as she had hoped. She ran hard, faster than she had ever run before. She didn't look back. She knew they were there. She could hear them. After several blocks, her legs were burning. She couldn't keep going much longer, but she had to get the bubbles as far from Lizzie and the kids as possible. Then her foot caught on something. She fell hard on the pavement. When she looked up, the bubbles were all around her. They made their strange metal sound again. It almost seemed like they were talking to each other. Amy closed her eyes. At least Lizzie and the kids would be safe. At least they had a chance. At the science center, Rick, Paul, and the others were searching frantically. "It should be here," Paul said, looking through cabinets in the main lab. "The record said it was stored in Section C." "This whole place is a mess," Sarah said. "It looks like people left in a hurry." Susan was watching the windows. "Those flying things are getting closer. We don't have much time." Rick's radio suddenly crackled. "Rick? Can anyone hear me?" It was Lizzie's voice. Rick grabbed the radio. "Who is this?" "Lizzie, Amy's sister. She gave me her radio. She stayed behind. To distract those things. To save us. We're outside the science center now." Rick ran to the window. He could see a woman and 2 children hiding behind a car across the street. "I see you," he said into the radio. "Stay there. I'm coming to get you." He turned to the others. "Keep looking for the weapon. I'll be right back." "Be careful," Paul warned. Rick nodded, then ran outside. He moved quickly from cover to cover. The flying bubbles were everywhere now, but they seemed focused on the buildings, not the street. He reached Lizzie and the children. "Come on," he said. "Stay low and follow me." They made it back to the science center safely. Once inside, Lizzie told them what had happened to Amy. "We'll find her," Rick promised, though he wasn't sure if it was a promise he could keep. "I found it," Paul suddenly called from the back room. "I found the weapon." They all rushed over. Paul was holding a small black box. It didn't look like much. "This is it?" Rick asked doubtfully. "Yes," Paul said. "According to the records, it's a piece of their own technology. The first explorers thought it was some kind of control device." "How does it work?" Sarah asked. Paul hesitated. "That's the problem. They never figured that out. Outside, the world continued to fall apart. The ancient ones were awake. And the last hope of humanity was a small black box that no one knew how to use. Amy opened her eyes. She was not dead. She was in a strange place. Everything around her was black and smooth. The walls seemed to move slightly like they were breathing. She tried to stand. Her body felt heavy, but she managed to get to her feet. The room she was in had no doors or windows, just smooth black walls that curved above her. "Hello?" she called. Her voice sounded flat, like the walls were eating the sound. Something moved in the corner of the room. Amy turned quickly. A part of the wall was changing shape. It pushed out, forming what looked almost like a face, but not a human face. It had no real features, just bumps where eyes and a mouth should be. "What are you?" Amy asked, her voice shaking. The face did not answer. Instead, the wall behind it opened. A hole appeared, leading to a long passage. Amy had no choice but to follow. The passage led to a larger space. It looked like the inside of a huge bubble. The walls were partly clear, and Amy could see the city outside, or what was left of it. Most buildings were gone now. The black tower rose high above everything. "Why are you doing this?" Amy asked. The empty air. "Why destroy everything?" To her surprise, a voice answered. Not a human voice. It was deep and seemed to come from the walls themselves. "We are not destroying, we are changing." Amy spun around, looking for the source of the voice. Changing what? Everything. This world. This is what we do. We sleep until a world is ready. Then we wake and make it perfect. Perfect for what? Amy demanded. For those who come after. They need worlds that match them. Your kind does not fit their needs. Amy felt cold all over. You're preparing Earth for someone else? Yes. They will come soon. We wake. We change. They come. This is how it has always been. But this is our home, Amy shouted. You can't. Just take it. The voice was quiet for a moment, then it said, We have taken many worlds. This is our purpose. Amy thought of her sister, of the children, of all people on Earth. Please, she said more softly, there must be some way we can share the planet, or you could help us find another home. No, that is not possible. Your kind would fight them, as you fight us now. We're only fighting because you're destroying our cities, killing people. It is necessary. The change must be complete. At the Science Center, Rick, Paul, and the others were studying the black box. It has no buttons, no controls of any kind, Paul said in frustration. How are we supposed to use it? Susan was scanning it with one of the lab's devices. It's giving off energy, the same kind that the towers are giving off, but different somehow. Maybe it responds to them, Sarah suggested. Maybe it only works when it's near one of the towers. Rick looked out the window. The tower in the city center was now fully formed. It was massive, reaching into the clouds. If that's true, we need to get closer to it. That's suicide, Paul, said. Rick nodded. Probably, but what choice do we have? Lizzie, who had been sitting quietly with her children, suddenly spoke up. Amy might be there, at the tower. Those things took her. Rick looked at her in surprise. Why do you think that? They didn't kill her. They surrounded her. If they wanted her dead, why not just do it? Maybe they took her, like they're taking parts of the city. It made a strange kind of sense. Rick turned back to the others. I'm going to the tower, with the box. Who's coming with me? They all looked uncertain. Then Paul stepped forward. I'll go. Sarah nodded. Me too. Susan hesitated, then said, I'll stay with Lizzie and the children. Try to keep them safe. How will you get to the tower? Lizzie asked. Those things are everywhere. Rick looked around the lab. We need a vehicle. Something fast. In the garage of the Science Center, they found an old van. It wasn't much, but it had a full tank of gas. This will have to do, Rick said. They put the black box in a bag and loaded up with anything else that might help. Flashlights, radios, a first aid kit. Then they climbed into the van. Be careful, Susan said as they prepared to leave. We will, Rick promised. If we're not back in 3 hours. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They all knew what it meant. Rick drove with Paul beside him and Sarah in the back. They left the science center and headed toward the tower. The streets were mostly empty now. Abandoned cars, broken glass. Sometimes they saw people hiding, watching them with fearful eyes as they passed. As they got closer to the tower, they saw more of the black bubbles. They seemed to be gathering things, pieces of buildings, cars, even plants, taking them back to the tower. What are they doing? Sarah wondered. Changing the world, Paul said quietly. Just like the warning said, they had to stop a few blocks from the tower. The roads were too damaged to go further. They would have to continue on foot. Stay close, Rick said as they got out of the van. And stay quiet. They moved carefully between buildings, avoiding open spaces. The black box in Rick's bag seemed to be getting warm. He could feel it through the fabric. I think it's responding to the tower, he whispered. It's doing something. They were very close now. The tower rose above them like a mountain. Up close, they could see that it wasn't solid. Parts of it shifted and moved. It was alive in some way. Now what? Sarah asked. Before Rick could answer, a group of black bubbles appeared. They surrounded the 3 humans quickly, moving too fast to escape. This is it, Rick thought. This is how it ends. But the bubbles didn't attack. Instead, they formed a path leading to the tower. They want us to go in, Paul realized. It's a trap, Sarah said. Maybe, Rick agreed. But I think the box is pulling them somehow. I think we're supposed to go in. With no better options, they followed the path of bubbles. A door opened in the base of the tower. They walked through. Inside, they found themselves in a large black room, and there, standing in the center, was Amy. Amy, Rick called, rushing forward. Amy turned. Her eyes widened in surprise. Rick, why are you here? We brought the weapon, he said. We thought it might stop these things. It's not a weapon, Amy said. At least I don't think it is. They've been talking to me, showing me things. Who has? Paul asked. The ancient ones. I think they're some kind of caretakers or gardeners. They prepare worlds for others. Rick pulled out the black box. Do you know what this is? Amy looked at it. Where did you get that? The first explorers found it. We think it's their technology. Amy reached for the box. As soon as she touched it, it began to glow. The walls of the room responded, glowing, with the same light. It's a key, Amy said, her voice different now, like she was remembering something. A key to change their programming. She held the box in both hands. It opened, revealing a small, glowing core. I know what to do now, she said. And in that moment, as the light from the box grew brighter, there was finally hope for Earth. A chance to change the ancient warning from never wake them to they woke and we survived.